There's an old line that gets passed around boardrooms and business schools: owe the bank $100,000, and you have a problem. Owe the bank 100 million, and the bank has a problem. It usually gets credited to J. Paul Getty, though the idea traces back at least as far as Keynes. And honestly, it belongs to nobody, because it's too true to have needed inventing. What makes it interesting isn't the joke. It's that it describes a real mechanism, a measurable one. It runs inside the same institution, in the same building, under the same logo, at every hour of every day. Owe them $8,000 and you get a robocall at 7 in the morning. Owe them 80 million and you get lunch. Owe them 8 billion and they beg you not to fail. Most people only ever experience one or two rungs of that ladder, and because they only see their own rung, they mistake the treatment they receive for a verdict on who they are. It isn't. It never was. So let's walk the whole ladder. 7 levels of debt, what the bank calls you at each one, how it treats you, and the arithmetic underneath. By the end, the 7A robocall and the multi-billion-dollar rescue are going to look like exactly what they are. The same equation, solved with different numbers. What banks actually sell before the levels. One idea, because everything else hangs off it. A bank does not care whether you're a good person. It cannot perceive that it isn't equipped to. What it cares about is whether you're predictable, because predictability is the only thing it can price. Every decision a bank makes about you comes out of a single equation: the probability you don't pay, multiplied by how much they lose if you don't. That's the whole thing. Your interest rate, your credit limit, whether a human being ever returns your call, whether the phone rings at 7 or a relationship manager buys you a steak. All of it is downstream of those two numbers. 3 things move those numbers, and none of them is how nice you are. The first is collateral. Can they take something back if you stop paying? The second is predictability. Can a model score you? Or does a human have to actually look at your file? And the third is relative size. How big is your debt compared to their balance sheet? Out of those 3 comes the rule that governs everything below. Call it the asymmetry rule. When the debt is small, you're the one afraid of losing what you have. When the debt is large, they're the ones afraid of losing what they lent. Everything from here is that one sentence. Scaled up. Level 0, no debt at all. Let's start at the bottom, which most people assume is the top. At level 0, the industry has a name for you. Your credit invisible. A thin file. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has estimated that tens of millions of American adults have no usable credit record at all. How do banks treat you? They don't. You don't exist. You get denied for apartments, for car loans, sometimes for utilities and phone plans. Not because you're risky, because you're unmeasurable. Here's the math. A blank file has no variance to model. There's nothing to compute. So the default action is decline. That rejection isn't a judgment about you. It's a null value. And the mechanism behind it is almost comically simple. Credit scores get built out of a handful of inputs: your payment history, your utilization, how old your accounts are, what mix of credit you have, how recently you've applied for things. 0 inputs produce 0 output. There is no field in that model labeled "actually, she's just very responsible." The system was never designed to reward the absence of debt. It was designed to price the presence of it, which sets the trap. Saying "I've never borrowed a dime in my life" feels like virtue. To the machine, it reads as unverified. Think about the version of this that should genuinely bother you. A woman pays her rent on time for 12 years, uses a debit card, never misses a bill, has $40,000 sitting in savings. She applies for a mortgage and gets declined. Meanwhile, a man with 3 credit cards and $9,000 of revolving debt gets approved at a decent rate because he's been generating data. Her discipline is invisible. His debt is legible. That contrast is this entire piece in miniature. The system doesn't reward virtue. It rewards visibility. You cannot win a game you were never scored in. Level 1, small consumer debt. Now you've got a credit card, somewhere between $500 and $10,000 of balance, and suddenly the bank loves you. Their name for you here is a revolver. Internally, you're the profit center. The treatment is beautiful. Pre-approved offers in the mail. Rewards. Sign-up bonuses. Credit limit increases you never asked for. Arriving like gifts. The math is why. If you carry a balance at 20 to 25% APR, you are the single most profitable customer type that bank has. You're not a cost of doing business. You are the business. And here's the word that should reframe everything. Someone who pays their statement in full every month, who never carries a balance. The industry calls that person a deadbeat. That's not an insult I invented for effect. That is the actual term. The guy who does exactly what your grandmother told you to do, who plays the game flawlessly, who never pays a cent of interest. To the bank, he's a deadbeat. He costs money to service and generates almost nothing. Sit with that. The bank's private vocabulary calls responsible people deadbeats and indebted people revolvers. That isn't a metaphor. It's an accounting position. Now look at the minimum payment, because most people have never really looked at it. The minimum is usually around 2 to 3% of your balance. It is not designed to get you out of debt. It's engineered to maximize duration, the length of time your balance sits there generating interest. A balance at 22%, paid at the minimum, takes over a decade to clear. And by the end, you've paid back roughly double what you borrowed. The minimum payment isn't a lifeline. It's a leash with a comfortable collar, and those unrequested limit increases. Those aren't rewards either. A higher limit lowers your utilization ratio, which raises your score, which qualifies you to borrow more, which, if you use it, raises your balance. The gift is the hook. They're not congratulating you on your progress. They're extending the runway. It's worth knowing there are sublevels inside level 1, because the bank absolutely knows if you pay in full, you're a deadbeat, and they tolerate you. They earn only the merchant fee. If you carry a modest balance, you're a revolver, and they adore you. And if you're maxed out but still paying, you're stretched, still profitable. But notice what happens. The limit increases quietly stop. That last one is the tell. The moment you become genuinely risky, the gifts end. The generosity was never generosity. It was a bet that you'd keep paying. So the trap at level 1 is confusing being liked with being served. A casino loves its regulars too. They're not rewarding you. They're renting your future income and calling it points. Level 2, when you stop paying. Now you miss payments. And you stop being a name, you become a bucket. Day 30, day 60, day 90. Nobody's angry at you. You've simply been reclassified. The treatment turns aggressive, and there's a structural reason for that. There's nothing to repossess. Unsecured means the only tool they have left is pressure. Here's the timeline, and it's worth memorizing. For the first 29 days, you get a late fee and an automated nudge. You're still theirs. At day 30, it gets reported to the credit bureaus, and your score drops hard. Between 60 and 90 days, the collections calls start, and a penalty rate may kick in. And then, at roughly 180 days, comes the charge-off. After that, your debt gets sold to a debt buyer for pennies on the dollar. Two of those words deserve unpacking. Charge-off sounds like forgiveness. It isn't. It's an accounting move. The bank recognizes the loss on its own books. For regulatory and tax purposes, you still owe. Nothing about your obligation changed. Only their spreadsheet did. And then they're sold. This is the one that should change how you think. Your $8,000 debt might get sold to a debt buyer for something like $400. That buyer now owns the entire claim, which means if they collect $1,000 from you, they've more than doubled their money and gone home happy. That is why settlement is possible. That is why people negotiate these balances down dramatically, and it actually works. And that is exactly why the person on the phone will never, ever raise the possibility first. There's a strange rhythm to this stage, too. Early in delinquency, the original creditor still hopes to keep you as a paying customer. So there's an odd politeness underneath the pressure. After charge-off, that hope is gone and your file becomes inventory. The rudest calls tend to cluster in the window where you're worth more frightened than sold. Know your guardrails here. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act limits what third-party collectors can do. No contact before 8 in the morning or after 9 at night. No threats. And they have to give you written validation of the debt if you ask for it. Statutes of limitations vary by state. And this one catches people. Making a single payment can restart that clock. Check your own state's rules. And know that nonprofit credit counseling exists. And it's free. I'm showing you the map here, not giving you legal advice. If you're actually in this, talk to someone qualified. The trap at level 2 is treating the balance as a sacred, fixed number. By this stage, it's a discounted asset that's already changed hands. They didn't forgive it. They sold it for less than a tank of gas. Level 3, secured debt. Car loans, mortgages. The debts most people organize their entire adult lives around, $30,000 to $600,000. Here, you're collateral backed, and shortly after that, you're a line item in a pool. The treatment is polite, professional, robotic. Nobody in that building knows your name. And crucially, nobody needs to. The math explains the tone. They can take the thing back. The risk has moved off their balance sheet and into your driveway. That politeness is a function of security, not affection. They're calm because they're covered. And here's the mechanism most people never learn. Your mortgage probably doesn't stay with the bank whose name was on the paperwork. It gets sold. It gets bundled into a mortgage-backed security. Your servicer, the company you actually send money to, can change without your consent and without anyone asking your opinion. And that servicer usually has no discretion to be generous with you because it doesn't own your loan. It's a processor, executing rules written by somebody you will never meet. You didn't have a relationship, you had a cash flow stream that happened to have your name on it. Now compare the car to the house, because this teaches you something. Repossessing a car is fast, cheap, and largely automated. So they'll move early and without emotion, because taking it back costs them almost nothing. Foreclosing on a house is slow, expensive, legally supervised, and reputationally ugly, which is why lenders will very often modify a mortgage rather than seize the property. Listen to what just happened there. That's the first appearance of leverage anywhere on this ladder. And notice where it came from. You didn't become powerful. Nothing about you changed. Taking it back simply got expensive for them. That's the whole mechanism, showing up early in miniature. Leverage isn't a quality you possess. It's a cost you impose. So the trap at level 3 is thinking the payment is the cost. The payment is the fee. The cost is the lien. The fact that someone else's name sits on your life for 30 years. And every plan you make lives downstream of it. They're not polite because they like you. They're polite because they already hold the keys. Level 4, small business. $500,000 to $10 million. And now they call you a relationship. For the first time, a human being opens your file. You get a named relationship manager. A phone number that rings an actual person who knows what your company does. Occasionally. Lunch. It feels like a rival. It feels like you finally made it to the table. But here's the math behind that human. You get a person because your business is too weird to be scored by a model and too small to matter to the bank. That's it. Your revenue is lumpy. Your industry has quirks. Your balance sheet doesn't fit the template. They need judgment. That human is a cost they're absorbing, not a courtesy they're extending. And then there's the personal guarantee. You feel promoted, but you almost certainly signed a PG. which means the business borrowed and you owe. If it collapses, they come for your house. Look carefully at what that produces. You've purchased level 4 treatment while carrying level 3 risk on a level 1 safety net. The stake is real. So, is the lien on your home? Those two things aren't in tension. They're the same transaction. There's new vocabulary now, and it runs your life. Covenants, which are promises about ratios, not about payments. Debt service coverage ratio, which is your cash flow divided by your debt payments. Quarterly reporting, meaning you now file with them. Like a small subsidiary of an institution you don't own any part of. And here's the kicker. You can break a covenant while paying perfectly on time, and they can call the loan. At level 1, being current was enough. At level 4, being current is table stakes. You're being monitored on trajectory now, not performance. The trap is mistaking your relationship manager for an ally. He's a risk sensor with a business card and a quota. He's pleasant because pleasant people get better information. And information is the product he's actually collecting over that lunch. You know you've made it when the bank sends a person. You know you haven't when that person asks you to sign personally. Level 5 corporate. 50 million to a billion. Now you're a client. And for the first time, banks compete for you. The flip starts here, and it starts structurally. Loans this size get syndicated, split across a group of banks, so no single institution eats the whole risk. That fact alone is your leverage. No individual lender can afford to be the one who blows up the deal. So the treatment inverts. You don't go to them. They come to you, pitch decks, treasury services, investment banking teams asking what else they can do for you. You even get covenant-light loans, deals with dramatically fewer restrictions than a small business owner would ever be granted. And why do those exist? Because borrowers had enough power to demand them. Every loosened term is a fossil record of who had leveraged the year that deal was struck. But the real revelation is what happens when it goes wrong. You don't get a collections call. You get transferred to the workout group. That's a department whose entire job is to save the loan, not seize it. Restructure, extend, amend. They would rather carry a limping borrower than bury a dead one. Why? Because liquidating a $400 million loan books, a $400 million loss this quarter, in front of shareholders, with a specific manager's name attached to it, extending it makes the problem next year's problem. Possibly somebody else's problem entirely. Institutional incentives run on quarters, and quarters are shorter than most crises. Notice what just happened. At level 2, the bank's incentive was to squeeze you. At level 5, the bank's incentive is to keep you alive. Nobody's morality improved. The number just got big enough to change the math. This is where we need to talk stops being a threat and becomes a negotiation. Level 6, too big to fail. 10 billion and up. Now they call you a counterparty exposure, a risk to them. And they cannot let you fail. Your death certificate would have their name on it. The math is the same equation you've been watching this whole time. Your default no longer damages you most, it damages them most. And possibly everyone else too. Not a single term in that equation changed. You just walked around to the other side of it. 2 examples. And verify the specifics before you repeat them anywhere. Because the details matter. In 2008, institutions whose collapse threatened the plumbing of the financial system got rescued, and the mechanism was public money, not market discipline. And in 2023, when Silicon Valley Bank failed, uninsured depositors, people holding balances far above the $250,000 FDIC limit, were made whole anyway. Because the alternative looked worse than the precedent, too big to fail is not a compliment. It's a hostage situation where it's genuinely unclear who's holding whom. And here's the symmetry I want to leave you with. Level 2 gets a robocall over $8,000. Level 6 gets a rescue over 80 billion. Same institution. Same logic. Same equation. It was never morality. It was size. The whole way down. At the bottom, Your debt is your problem. At the top, your debt is everyone's problem, so it stops being a problem. Level 7, when the bank is the borrower. One last turn. To close the loop, banks borrow too, from depositors, from each other, from the Fed. And when a bank overlevers itself, the institution above it decides whether it lives or dies. Running exactly the same arithmetic, exactly the same asymmetry. Every level is level 1 to somebody bigger. The bank robocalling you at 7 in the morning over $8,000 is somebody else's revolver. There's no top of this ladder. There's just a bigger creditor you haven't met yet, where the power actually flips. So here's the takeaway. Power doesn't flip at a dollar amount, it flips at a ratio. The precise moment your default hurts their balance sheet more than it hurts your life. Picture one curve. Fear of loss starts at 100% on you. It decays as the number grows. It crosses over somewhere between level 4 and level 5, and it ends at 100% on them. 7 levels running along the bottom. That curve is the whole story. 3 things move you along it, and all 3 are available at any level. The first is optionality. A second lender who wants your business is leverage, even at level 1, especially at level 1. The second is predictability boring, documented on time. Boring borrowers get better pricing than impressive ones, every single time, at every level. And the third is asymmetry of pain, anything that makes your failure inconvenient for them. That's what the homeowner has that the credit card holder doesn't. And now the honest caveat, because it matters. I'm not telling you to go acquire $80 million in debt so that a bank will fear you. The lesson isn't borrow more. The lesson is that their treatment of you was never a measurement of your worth. It was a measurement of your size. Every level of this ladder is the same equation with different numbers. The only variable that ever really changes is who's more afraid. Oh, 100,000. You have a problem. Oh, 100 million? The bank has a problem. Now you know the arithmetic behind the joke. So which level are you on right now? Be honest. Level 0 counts. The bank was never on your side. It was never against you either. It was doing math the entire time. Now, so can you?